All right, everyone. Welcome to this session on alternatives to savings bank accounts. I am Neil Borate. I am editor personal finance at Mint, and my team covers all things related to personal finance. So that includes mutual funds, retirement, insurance, tax, etc. Um, Let me just give you guys a brief about NISM, and if you think I should also be speaking in Hindi, मुझे बता दो मैं थोड़ा मिक्स कर लूंगा. So NISM, National Institute of Securities Markets, is a public trust established in 2006 by SEBI, the regulator of securities markets in India. The institute carries out a variety of capacity building activities at various levels aimed at enhancing the quality standards in securities markets. As part of its investor education mandate, NISM regularly conducts webinars, awareness programs to empower investors and promote informed decision making. Investor education serves as a key pillar for investor protection, as awareness helps reduce the risk of falling prey to false promises or unsolicited advice. In addition to investor focused efforts, NISM offers a wide range of certification programs for professionals in the financial markets. It also conducts certification examinations mandated by regulators and delivers specialized training programs to support compliance skill enhancement, overall professional development in the securities markets. Um, Now, let me first give you guys a brief about what I'm going to be talking about. And कुछ requests आ रही है कि हिंदी और इंग्लिश में दोनों बात करो. तो बेसिकली ये सेशन जो है ये सेविंग्स अकाउंट्स के जो दूसरे ऑप्शंस है, ऑल्टरनेटिव ऑप्शंस है, उस बारे में है. जैसे कि आपने देखा होगा, बैंकों ने सेविंग अकाउंट के रेट बहुत ही कम कर दिए अभी. जस्ट 2.7% इन SBI, 2.75% इन अदर बैंक्स. So that has become an issue for a lot of savers and investors. So I will take you guys one by one through all of the alternatives, क्या advantages है, क्या disadvantages है, and we will finish with questions. So you can also type your questions while I'm talking, and I'll take note of those. या फिर आप end में पूछ सकते हो. All participants will receive a participation certificate within 3 to 4 days. The recording of this session will also be available on the NISM YouTube channel. So now I'll just present my screen and we will start. Okay, so alternatives to savings accounts as interest rates crash. तो जैसे मैंने कहा पहले कि savings rates जो usually 3 to 4% होते हैं, they have recently been reduced by many banks to just 2.7, 2.75. You don't know how much lower they will go. And the money that we keep in savings accounts, banks are kind of getting a free lunch. क्योंकि वहाँ पे वो कम interest देते हैं, और जो loans, the loans that banks give out, there they charge a higher interest. So as savers, can we get smarter? Can we get better returns for our money? Even our idle money जो हम savings account में रखते हैं. This is what we will talk about today. And as I said, feel free to ask your questions in the chat or end में. We'll keep maximum time for questions, and I will finish my presentation as quickly as possible. तो जैसे कि मैंने कहा था, अगर आप आज के ज़माने में देखो तो सारे जो बड़े बड़े बैंक्स हैं उन्होंने इंटरेस्ट रेट्स कट किए. तो HDFC, Axis, ICICI 2.75 पे आ गए हैं. SBI has cut its rate to just 2.7%. एंड पहले जो डिडक्शन मिलता था इन द ओल्ड रेजिम अंडर सेक्शन 80 TTA, 10,000 rupees for savings account interest, and section 80 TTB, which was on any kind of interest for senior citizens, that is not there in the new regime, and most people have shifted to the new regime. As per the government statistics, around 70% people have shifted to the new regime. So they are not getting the benefit of these deductions also. And this has further reduced the use of traditional savings account and keeping money in those accounts. So the first alternative, आप क्या कर सकते हो? अगर आपके रेट कम कर दिए बैंक ने, अगर 2.75 हो गया, तो आप क्या कर सकते हो? First option is कि you move it to a different bank with a higher rate. Now, there are some large banks which do offer higher rate. One example is IDFC First, which offers 7.25% if your savings balance is above 10 lakhs. But there are always terms and conditions. जैसे वो म्यूचुअल फंड में ऐड में होता है ना, जल्दी से बोलते हैं, तो यहाँ पे भी टर्म्स एंड कंडीशंस होते हैं. सो आईडीएफसी का टर्म्स ये है कि इट्स स्लैब वाइज. तो अगर आपने एग्जैक्टली 10 लाख रुपए रखे आईडीएफसी में, तो यू विल नॉट गेट 7.25%, क्योंकि 0 to 5 lakhs they are giving 3% and 5 to 10 lakhs they are giving 5%. It's a bit like income tax slabs. Slab wise they are giving. So actually you will just get 4% as the average rate, not 7.25. And even if you put 20 lakhs, for example, you will get 4% on the first 10 lakhs and 7.25% on the next 10 lakhs. And the average rate you'll get is the average of those two numbers. So you'll again not get 7.25%. So this is an issue. Second thing is that when you move your money to a different bank, जब आप दूसरे कोई बैंक में आपका पैसा शिफ्ट कर देते हो, तो अगर वो छोटी बैंक है तो रिस्क आता ही है. योर बेटिंग की बैलेंस शीट सब ठीक है, ठीक रहेगा. एंड वहाँ पे जो DI CGC डिपॉजिट इंश्योरेंस कॉर्पोरेशन का जो कवर रहता है, दैट इज ओनली टिल 5 लाख पर अकाउंट होल्डर पर बैंक. सो अगर आपका अमाउंट ज्यादा है तो यू आर नॉट कवर्ड बाय डिपॉजिट इंश्योरेंस if you move your money to a different bank. And there's also the hassle of, अगर आपके multiple banks है, keeping track of all of those banks, and the interest you're getting there, इतने सारे password आपको याद करने पड़ेंगे, इतने सारे apps. It is a hassle. Opening a new account is also a process. You have to do KYC, re-KYC sometimes. So it's not such a straightforward thing कि आप 4-5 अकाउंट खोल लो और kind of maximize कर लो through different banks. But still, for some people this works well. This is option number one, alternative number one. Your second option is कि आप FD करा लो in the existing bank or in another bank. FD rates are around 7.5, in some rare cases 8%, but roughly 7.5% you can say. But then you are locking in your money for a certain amount of time, and usually the best rates come in the 2 to 3 year, 2 to 4 year. They will not come in the very short term. You will not get the best rate for a 1 year or a 6 month FD. And in the meantime, if you need your money, you have to break the FD. There's a penalty of 1%. Now somebody said कि what if I make like small FDs, 10-12 ऐसे छोटी FDs कर ली, तो वो क्यों ना करूं? Again, it's okay, but it's not the best solution, because you still will be breaking some part of the FDA. कि अगर आपको 2,500 रुपए ही चाहिए एंड आपने 6,000 की FD करी है या 10,000 की करी है, तो some amount of breakage is happening, right? You can't exactly match the amount that you need. So that is the second drawback with FDs. The third drawback with FDs is that they are taxed at the marginal rate. यानी कि अगर आपका 30% स्लैब रेट है, मार्जिनल रेट है, सो योर FD इंटरेस्ट इज बीइंग टैक्स्ड एट 30%. मतलब कि लेट्स से कि आपका 7% ग्रॉस इंटरेस्ट है. सो आफ्टर यू टेक अवे 30% ऑफ टैक्सेशन, यू आर लेफ्ट विथ अराउंड 5% ऑफ नेट interest, which is just about equal to inflation, sometimes even less than inflation. So वहां पे प्रॉब्लम आ गया. Then FDs have what is called accrual based taxation. मतलब कि even if you have not received the money in your account, even if the FD has not matured, फिर भी हर साल you have to report the interest that you are getting on the bank FD and pay tax. Even if you have not received a single rupee from the bank yet, you have to pay tax on an accrual basis. Some people have the cash system, but that has its own issues. By and large, most people follow the accrual based system of accounting. And banks also deduct TDS on that basis. Har saal banks deduct TDS of 10% on the accrual basis of accounting. So you are losing, in a sense, it's not tax efficient. You're paying a lot of money in tax. फिर आते हैं third option पे, which is sweep in FDs. A lot of people are fans of this kind of FD because there is no premature penalty. A lot of banks have this and they advertise it a lot. But there is a catch to sweep in FDs, and that catch is if you take out money early. Let's say कि आपने 1 year की FD करी है, लेकिन आपने 1 महीने में ही कुछ पैसे खर्च किए. You've written a check from your savings account. Let's say 10,000 rupees का check लिखा है, and similar amount moves from the sweep in FD into the savings account. That's how sweep in FD works. It is linked to your savings account. So if you spend money from the savings account, that much balance moves from here to there. Now, for that amount of spending, that amount of withdrawal, you only get the interest that is applicable to 1 month corresponding FD. So if your 1 year FD has a 1% rate, and let's say your 1 month FD has just a 4% rate, you're only going to get 4% on the amount you have spent. So unless you really are able to keep your money for that entire duration of 1 year, you're not going to get the interest rate which is there on the FD. You're going to get a lower interest rate क्योंकि आप in a sense तोड़ रहे हो, धीरे-धीरे तोड़ रहे हो by spending money. And even though there is no premature termination penalty, फिर भी you're getting that lesser rate which applies to just that period for which you have kept that amount of money. Let's say you spend 10,000 rupees in the first month, 20,000 rupees in the second month, 30,000 rupees in the third month. So for 10,000 you're getting just 1 month's interest. For 20,000 you're getting 2 months interest rate rather. 3 months, your 30,000 rupees you're getting 3 months ka interest rate, which is obviously going to be lower than the 1 year FD that you made or the 2 year FD that you made. So that is the issue with sweep in FD. Other issue is again accounting gets a bit complicated in your bank statements. You have to figure out कि इतने पैसे चले गए, फिर इतने पैसे आ गए from the sweep in FD. Reconciliation becomes a bit of a hassle. So that is the issue with what is called sweep in FDs या फिर sweep in sweep out भी कहते हैं. But still, it's there as an alternative. I'm not saying any of these options are bad, by the way. Each option will suit some category of people. So sweep and FDs do work for people who don't want to take much risk, who like the convenience of having the money in the same bank. And sweep and FDs have the same taxation issues that a normal FD has. There's accrual based taxation. So as I said before, अगर आपका interest accrue हुआ है, मतलब आपने 3 साल की FD की है लेकिन पहले साल में ही जो इंटरेस्ट आ गया, लेट्स से आपने 1 लाख की FD की है 10% इंटरेस्ट पे, तो 10,000 रुपए जो इंटरेस्ट आपको पहले साल में ही मिल गया है उस पे आपको टैक्स देना पड़ेगा पहले साल में ही, इवन इफ आपकी FD मैच्योर हो रही है 3 साल बाद. दिस इज एक्रूअल बेस्ड टैक्सेशन और बैंक TDS डिडक्ट करती है उसी हिसाब से. एंड एज आई सेड, वो स्लैब रेट पे टैक्सेशन होता है. अगर आप 30% ब्रैकेट में हो तो FD का इंटरेस्ट का ऑलमोस्ट 1/3 पैसा चला जाता है इन टैक्स. सो इट्स नॉट अ वेरी टैक्स एफिशिएंट वे ऑफ इन्वेस्टिंग योर मनी और सेविंग योर मनी. अब आते हैं लिक्विड फंड्स पे. दिस इज अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग ऑल्टरनेटिव. सो लिक्विड फंड्स पे रेट क्या होता है? नाउ unlike in FD, there is no defined rate. वहाँ पे कुछ लिखते नहीं है कि you are going to get 5% or 6% or 7%. It's linked to the short-term interest rates in the economy. So currently they are around 5 to 6%. They fluctuate. Sometimes they are lower, sometimes they are higher, but they are roughly similar to FD rates. अगर आप 1 year की FD करोगे and liquid fund का जो yield है वो देखोगे तो roughly वो same zone में रहता है. There is no big difference between liquid fund yields and the interest rates in the short term in the economy. लेकिन जो बड़ा बेनिफिट है लिक्विड फंड का वो है टैक्सेशन में, टैक्स में. और वो बेनिफिट ये है कि जब आप लिक्विड फंड से कोई रिडेम्पशन करते हो, मानो कि आपने 1 लाख रुपए डाल दिए लिक्विड फंड ने और उसका ग्रोथ हो गया, उसका लेट्स से 10% रिटर्न आ गया. अगेन एग्जाम्पल है, एक्चुअली में 10% नहीं आता यूजुअली, बट आई एम जस्ट मेकिंग इट सिंपल सो दैट यू गाइस कैन अंडरस्टैंड द कॉन्सेप्ट. तो मानो कि उसका 10% रिटर्न आ गया है, 10,000 रुपए आपकी गेन हुई है, NAV बढ़ गया है उतना, आपकी गेन हुई है. और उसके बाद आपने 1 लाख में से बस 10,000 रुपए ही निकाले. सो नाउ क्वेश्चन ये है कि दिस अमाउंट विच यू हैव विड्रॉन, Is that the interest portion, the capital gain portion, or is it the principal that you invested? And uska answer ye hai that the FIFO system usually applies. First in, first out. Matlab, partly the income tax department will consider your withdrawal as capital, return of capital, and partly they will see it as capital gain. तो कौन से रेशो में ये कंसिडर करेंगे कि आपने जो 10,000 रुपए विड्रॉ किए आपके 1 लाख इन्वेस्टमेंट में से वो कितना कैपिटल है कितना गेन है, तो वो प्रोपोर्शनेट होता है. तो इस एग्जांपल में रफली स्पीकिंग 10,000 में से 1,000 दे विल कंसिडर एज कैपिटल गेन एंड 9,000 दे विल कंसिडर एज principal, return of principal. So you're only going to be taxed on 1,000, not on the full 10,000. Although your investment has gone up by rupees 10,000 because of that return. I hope you're able to follow this maths, this example. अगर कुछ clear नहीं है तो मैं end में फिर से बताऊंगा. Just put that in the comments and the questions. But this is really important to understand that taxation of liquid funds is on a part capital, part gain basis, following the FIFO system, first in, first out. दूसरा टैक्स बेनिफिट जो आता है लिक्विड फंड्स में वो है सेट ऑफ. तो अगर आपका कहीं और कैपिटल लॉस है तो यू कैन सेट ऑफ कैपिटल गेन्स हियर अगेंस्ट कैपिटल लॉस एल्सवेयर. आपने शायद इक्विटी में कुछ कैपिटल लॉस किया है, या फिर घर बेच के कैपिटल लॉस किया है, या फिर कुछ और रीजन से कुछ और एसेट बेच के कैपिटल लॉस किया है. So you can set off capital gain over here against capital loss on a different asset, on a different product, and end up paying less tax. The third benefit is carry forward. आप 8 years तक आपके losses carry forward कर सकते हो. कि मानो कि आपने पिछले साल में कोई loss किया है, let's say on stocks or on equity funds, and इस साल में आपने capital gain करी है by redeeming your liquid funds. So you can set off that loss you have carried forward from the earlier years and again reduce your tax liability. This is a very big benefit on liquid funds, on any mutual fund, but people don't realize this, and it helps you reduce your taxation a lot. फिर बात आती है TDS की. तो as you would know, there is no TDS in mutual funds on resident Indians. NRIs के लिए होता है लेकिन not for resident Indians. Again, it helps you in a cash flow wise situation क्योंकि it may be that a few days of additional interest you're able to earn because TDS is not being cut. Of course, you have to comply with the advance tax rules. तो साल में 4 बार एडवांस टैक्स भरना पड़ता है खुद से. तो उसका बेनिफिट इतना भी नहीं है दैट आप साल के एंड में पूरा टैक्स भरो फिर आपको इंटरेस्ट लगेगा, लेकिन थोड़ा बहुत TDS ना होने के कारण यू गेट अ स्लाइटली हायर yield on this. फिर बात आती है फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी की. सो यू कैन विड्रॉ एनी अमाउंट फ्रॉम लिक्विड फंड. सो इफ यू गो बैक टू द ओरिजिनल प्रॉब्लम आई मेंशन अबाउट FD, किसी ने मुझे कहा था कि अरे अगर मैं छोटे छोटे FDs करूँ 10-12 और उतना ही तोड़ू इन केस आई नीड सम मनी, तो फिर ठीक है, ज्यादा पैसे नहीं लूज कर रहा हूँ. बट लिक्विड फंड की फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी इज नेक्स्ट लेवल बिकॉज यू आर ओनली विड्रॉइंग दैट मच amount that you need, that you're spending. If you're spending, I don't know, on a gym membership 24,000 rupees and 562 in for a one annual gym membership, then you're only withdrawing that much, exactly that much. It's really efficient that way. You're not withdrawing 30,000, you're not taking an FD for 50,000, you're withdrawing exactly the amount of money that you need. Now, the next benefit of liquid funds, and this is a little bit technical, थोड़ा आपको ये financial concept समझनी पड़ेगी. Again, feel free to ask me this at the end of the session to clarify again. But the concept I want to explain is कि आपको return rate क्या मिल रहा है. तो जैसे मैंने कहा था स्वीप इन FD में इशू ये है कि अगर आपने जल्दी से तोड़ दी तो आपको कम रेट मिलता है. आपको रेट मिलता है जो उस पीरियड के लिए एप्लीकेबल है. अगर आपने 2 महीने में कुछ अमाउंट विड्रॉ किया, कुछ अमाउंट के लिए तोड़ दी FD, तो बस उस अमाउंट का जो इंटरेस्ट रेट अप्लाई होता है वो मिलता है. नाउ इन केस ऑफ लिक्विड फंड्स, एक्चुअली even if you withdraw after 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, you still get the same annualized return as you do for a longer period. मतलब कि अगर the yield on the liquid fund is, let's say, 6%, you will get 6% annualized, even if you're withdrawing some amount early. That's just um, how the mutual funds work. You don't get let's say 3 or 4% because you have removed some money early. Remember, I'm talking about annualized, right? Not absolute. हो सकता है कि आपने पूरा पैसा निकाल के आपका जो गेन है वो 1 ही% है, आपने आपने 3 महीने में विड्रॉ कर दिया पूरा परसेंट, और उसका जो एब्सोल्यूट गेन है वो 1% ही है. दैट्स फाइन. आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट द एनुअलाइज गेन. अगर आप वही अमाउंट देखोगे how much it would be for the entire year if you had received that kind of gain, you would find that it is same as the liquid fund yield. I know this is kind of complicated, ये थोड़ा समझने में लोगों को दिक्कत आती है. So ask me, and if you want, we can connect after the session also, and I'm happy to explain this in a bit more detail. But this is another benefit of liquid fund. Apart from liquid fund, there are other short-term debt categories like ultra short-term and money market. वहाँ पे yields थोड़े ज़्यादा होते हैं. So that also, of course, risk भी थोड़ी higher है, but you can maybe get a little bit more, maybe 0.1%, 0.2% more than a liquid fund. Now, alternative 5, which is arbitrage funds. यहाँ पे सीधा सीधा आपको टैक्स बेनिफिट मिलता है. कैसे? तो आर्बिट्राज फंड्स करते क्या है? बेसिकली आर्बिट्राज फंड्स स्टॉक्स बाय करके रखते हैं और उतने अमाउंट का डेरिवेटिव्स में काउंटर ट्रेड करते हैं. मतलब दे बाय स्टॉक्स एंड दे सेल फ्यूचर्स of the same amount, exactly equal, and therefore the return they give is the same as the short-term interest rate in the economy. It's very similar to liquid funds. That's just how financial theory works. कि अगर आपने उस amount के derivatives short किए, so the difference between the spot price and the derivatives price, the futures price, is equal to the short-term interest rate in the economy. So यहाँ पे returns की बात इतनी नहीं होती. Of course, returns also fluctuate over here depending on how much bullishness there is in the market. Sometimes if there's a lot of speculation, bullishness, then the spreads are higher between the future and the spot price. Other times, if there is a lot of money coming into arbitrage funds, but there's not enough bullish sentiment in the market, the spreads can be lower also. But normally, generally, they are fluctuating around the short-term interest rate of the economy. Wahi 5 to 6% which you get in a liquid fund currently. Now, the question is, what is the benefit here? Benefit is big time tax benefit. और बेनिफिट ये है कि अगर आपने 1 साल के अंदर रिडीम किया तो आपको बस 20% शॉर्ट टर्म कैपिटल गेन्स टैक्स लगता है. अगर आपने 1 साल के बाद रिडीम किया तो 12.5% लॉन्ग टर्म कैपिटल गेन्स टैक्स लगता है. Because these funds invest at least 65% of their corpus in stocks, even though they are hedging it completely with derivatives, and therefore they fall into equity taxation. Apart from this, all of the benefits which I mentioned earlier for liquid funds, the FIFO system, part capital, part income, the set off, carry forward, no TDS, all of these benefits also apply to arbitrage funds. To any mutual fund, they apply. It's a big, big benefit. As I said earlier, risk ये है कि अगर बहुत सारा पैसा आ गया arbitrage funds में तो वो yields compress होते हैं, वो spreads compress होते हैं, because for every short trader in the market, there has to be a long corresponding somebody who's gone and bought the futures. So bullishness जो market में है वो इसका affect बिल्कुल करता है, but within a certain amount of proportion. ऐसा नहीं है कि it's very rare for a arbitrage spread to become zero or negative. It only happened once in my career during the COVID-19 pandemic. Finally, let's talk about the sixth and possibly the riskiest option to bank savings accounts. And these are hybrid funds with debt between 35 to 65%. Now, why is this range important? तो 2024 बजट में फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर ने एक नई म्यूचुअल फंड कैटेगरी क्रिएट कर दी in terms of taxation. They are neither equity funds in terms of taxation, nor are they debt funds. They are a in between category. एंड इनका रूल ये है कि अगर 2 साल बाद आपने रिडीम किया तो 12.5% लॉन्ग टर्म कैपिटल गेन्स टैक्स लगता है, विच इज क्वाइट बेनिफिशियल. 2 साल के अंदर आपने रिडीम किया तो स्लैब रेट, मार्जिनल रेट लगता है. एंड दीज फंड्स आर slowly now entering the market. So AMCs are launching them with 65% debt, 35%, sorry, less than 65% debt, and the rest they put into arbitrage. मतलब equity खरीदते हैं और उसको hedge करते हैं. Or they might have small amount of unhedged equity, like 10% unhedged equity. So there is a little bit of risk here, but by and large, they function like debt funds. एंड इसका 2 साल का मेन कंडीशन है फॉर यू टू गेट द टैक्स एडवांटेज, because the 12.5% kicks in after 2 years. So think of these as debt arbitrage FOFs. When you normally think of hybrid funds, you might be familiar with balance advantage, BAF जो कहते हैं, या बाकी categories. They are a bit different because उन categories में equity ज़्यादा होती है. They are not suitable as savings accounts alternatives because they are very volatile. लेकिन ये जो funds है, they are mainly debt funds. They have a little bit of arbitrage, but the volatility is a lot like debt rather than equity. Now, finally, what to check if you are using mutual funds as an alternative to bank savings accounts. एक तो expense ratio, because that eats into the yield. Yield मतलब जो पोर्टफोलियो है म्यूचुअल फंड का, वो क्या करते हैं, वो डेट बॉन्ड्स खरीदते हैं और बॉन्ड्स का एक इंटरेस्ट रेट होता है. तो रफली जो इंटरेस्ट रेट होता है वो यील्ड बन जाता है फॉर ऑफ द पोर्टफोलियो कंपेयर टू द प्राइस दैट द बॉन्ड्स हैव. एंड जो एक्सपेंस रेशियो होता है दैट ईट्स इनटू द यील्ड. तो अगर बहुत ज्यादा एक्सपेंस रेशियो है तो यू शुड स्टे अवे. एग्जिट लोड भी चेक करना इंपॉर्टेंट है बिकॉज दीज आर शॉर्ट टर्म नीड्स. सो अगर आपको 7 दिन के अंदर अंदर चाहिए तो दिस डज नॉट मेक सेंस. लिक्विड फंड्स have an exit load up to 7 days, and other debt fund categories can have longer exit loads. It can be 3 months, 6 months, 1 year also. So check that fund कि उसका exit load क्या है. Exit load मतलब exit charge होता है. If you redeem the money within this period, फिर आपको एक charge लगता है. एंड ऑफ कोर्स साइकोलॉजिकल कंफर्ट. अगर आपको वो फिक्स्ड अमाउंट, वो रिटर्न पता होना चाहिए कि मुझे एग्जैक्टली इतना मिल रहा है, तो फिर एफडी बेहतर है आपके लिए. अगर आप थोड़ा सा कंफर्टेबल हो विथ वॉलेटिलिटी की डेट फंड का एनएवी थोड़ा ऊपर नीचे हो रहा है, ठीक है, देन म्यूचुअल फंड्स डू मेक सेंस फॉर यू. So feel free to ask me any questions. These are my social media handles, X, LinkedIn, Instagram. Feel free to reach out to me after the session also, but right now also you can ask. Thank you very much. Okay, Jitesh has asked if we can get a PDF or recording of this presentation. It is on the YouTube channel of NISM. PDF I'm happy to mail to anyone who would like to get it. I'll type my mail ID here. You can just mail me with the request. एक क्वेश्चन है, एक बार डेट ओरिएंटेड फिर से बता दीजिए. तो डेट ओरिएंटेड शायद आप लास्ट वाली कैटेगरी की बात कर रहे हो जो डेट प्लस आर्बिट्राज है. तो वहां पे फंडा सिंपल है. फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर ने जो प्रोविजन लाई है कि 35 to 65% अगर डेट है तो 2 साल बाद उसका 12.5% लॉन्ग टर्म कैपिटल गेन्स टैक्स बन जाता है. तो ये वाले जो फंड्स है वो 65 के थोड़ा नीचे रखते हैं डेट को, ताकि वो इसका बेनिफिट ले आए. और जो बाकी अमाउंट है, बाकी जो 35% है, वो आर्बिट्राज में डालते हैं, या फिर 25% आर्बिट्राज में डालते हैं, 10% इक्विटी में डालते हैं, ताकि उनको डेट लाइक रिटर्न्स मिले, लेकिन आपको वो टैक्स बेनिफिट दे सके 2 साल बाद. तो दैट इज द फंडा बिहाइंड डेट ओरिएंटेड फंड्स. अगर आप लिक्विड फंड्स की बात करें तो उसका थोड़ा अलग है, तो यू कैन स्पेसिफाई लिक्विड फंड्स. Okay, next question from Pranali Patel is it good to invest for 6 months in arbitrage and the approximate returns? So approximate returns will be similar to the short term interest rates in the economy. तो अगर 5 to 6% prevailing short term rates है, you can check this. RBI gives you the returns of T-bills, treasury bills, CDs, CPs, etc. तो आप check कर सकते हो, but roughly it's in the 5 to 6% range. So arbitrage funds should be mirroring this. This is what financial theory says. Now, like I said in the presentation, uska volatility bhi hota hai, because if the market is very bullish, spreads become elevated. If market is bearish, spreads become compressed, and it deviates from this theory. But roughly, this is the range, similar to liquid funds. Should you invest it for 6 months or not? You can, but just take into account the risk. Like I said, uska thoda fluctuation hota hai yahan wahan, but you do get the tax benefit, which is 20% short-term capital gains tax for a 6-month period. Okay, let me go to the next question. Sorry, I was late. Okay, so you will get a presentation copy, and it's also on the YouTube channel. For a 40 to 60 age person, where to put money. So this depends on your risk appetite and goals also. Normally for people in that age bracket, आप शायद retire हो गए हो या retirement के पास हो. तो फाइनेंशियल थियोरी सेज कि आपका डेट ज्यादा होना चाहिए, इक्विटी कम होना चाहिए. और फिर बात आती है टैक्स एफिशिएंसी की. अगर आपने एफडी में सारे पैसे डाल दिए तो आप 30% गवर्नमेंट को टैक्स दे रहे हो. अगर आप सबसे हाईएस्ट स्लैब रेट में हो तो इसलिए डेट फंड्स का टैक्स एडवांटेज फिर उसमें आ जाता है कि जैसे मैंने लास्ट कैटेगरी बता दी, विच इज डेट प्लस आर्बिट्राज, उसका 2 साल बाद 12.5% लॉन्ग टर्म कैपिटल गेन्स टैक्स बन जाता है. एंड द वॉलेटिलिटी इज नॉट दैट हाई, मतलब थोड़ा सा आपको झेलना पड़ेगा, बट इट कैन बी अ टैक्स एफिशिएंट वे ऑफ ड्रॉइंग सम रिटायरमेंट इनकम. A lot depends on how comfortable you are with some amount of risk. Um, Okay, ROI in these debt-oriented funds. So ROI depends on the interest rates and the credit risk. कि fund अगर थोड़ा ट्रिपल ए में ही डाल रहा है तो yield will be a bit low. If they are putting some money in triple A but some money in double A rated paper also, it will be a slightly higher yield, and so on. So I can't give you a number because there are so many debt categories, but as I said, the liquid fund return will be on the side of the short-term interest rates in the economy. So currently in the 5 to 6% range. The other funds which put money in slightly longer dated debt, जैसे gilt funds है या फिर dynamic bond funds है, they might have a slightly higher yield. So it might be in the 6 to 8% range. Again, these are yields and they fluctuate. They are subject to risk, but roughly this is the amount that you might get. Can crypto and staking no, they cannot. Please do not think of crypto as a alternative to savings accounts. There are many reasons for it. It's extremely volatile, but more importantly than that, in India they are taxed at 30% without the benefit of set off. There are severe TDS provisions on trading of crypto, so please avoid crypto, at least as a savings account substitute. uh, Thank you very much, Ruchi, for the kind words. What is expense ratio? Okay, expense ratio is the fee that the mutual fund takes for managing your money. So it's uh, a percentage of the corpus. For example, अगर आपने 100 रुपए डाले हैं म्यूचुअल फंड में, तो हो सकता है कि आधा रुपया, मतलब 0.5 50 पैसे इज द एक्सपेंस रेशियो ऑफ द फंड. बॉन्ड लेना एक ऑल्टरनेटिव. हाँ, तो आप बॉन्ड्स भी ले सकते हो. डायरेक्ट बॉन्ड्स इज ऑल्सो एन ऑल्टरनेटिव. आई डिड नॉट टॉक अबाउट दैट मच बिकॉज रिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स के लिए ये थोड़ी मुश्किल सी बात है. देयर आर सम प्लेटफॉर्म्स व्हिच लेट यू बाय बॉन्ड्स डायरेक्टली, बट दे डोंट हैव एज मच लिक्विडिटी, एज मच फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी एज डेट फंड्स. अगर आप एक डेट फंड खरीदोगे तो उसमें कम से कम 20, 30, 40 बॉन्ड रहते हैं. तो अगर एक भी डिफॉल्ट हो जाए तो ठीक है, आपके आपके इतने पैसे नहीं जाएंगे. लेकिन अगर आपने कोई बॉन्ड लिया और वो पूरा कंपनी डिफॉल्ट हो गई तो आपके सारे पैसे डूब जाते हैं. तो मुझे नहीं लगता कि वो डिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स के लिए इतना सूटेबल है. बात आती है फिर अगर आपने गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड लिया तो वो तो नहीं डिफॉल्ट करता. लेकिन गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड में फिर वही है, फ्लेक्सिबल, मतलब इट्स अ हैसल टू गो ऑन दोस प्लेटफॉर्म्स एंड बाय एंड सेल. You have to know the yield, you have to know the clean price, dirty price, financial concepts. It's not easy. A debt fund just makes your life a lot easier. Somebody said CHF, conservative hybrid fund. Conservative hybrid fund is a reasonable option, लेकिन conservative hybrid funds are taxed as debt funds. मतलब उनका 75%, 75% रहता है डेट में और 25% रहते हैं इक्विटी में, और वो 65-35 वाला जो टैक्स कॉन्सेप्ट है वो फिट नहीं करता है. तो अगर आपने बस 10% चेंज किया, अगर आपका मतलब if you increase the equity from 25 to 35, decrease debt from 75 to 65, then you are in that tax wala category where after 2 years it's 12.5%. So CHF unfortunately does not fall into the beneficial tax system. But they are not a bad option if you're okay to pay the additional tax. CHF gives you a little bit of equity, मतलब उसका risk भी है, उसका return भी है, but mostly debt. Can you clarify TDS percent, how capital gains set off works? Okay, so TDS is 10%. Banks deduct it, and you get the information in the Form 26 AS or in the annual information statement AIS में होता है. How capital gains set off works? तो मानो कि आपने कोई फंड बेचा और उसमें लॉस कर दिया, और कोई और फंड बेचा और उसमें गेन कर दिया, तो वो प्लस माइनस होके एडजस्ट हो जाता है. या फिर कहीं और आपने स्टॉक बेचा, उसमें लॉस कर दिया, लेकिन यहाँ पे गेन है, तो फिर से वो प्लस माइनस करके एडजस्ट हो जाता है. कोई भी एसेट हो जिसमें आपने कैपिटल गेन या लॉस करा है, तो वो दूसरे एसेट के अगेंस्ट सेट ऑफ हो जाता है. मतलब अगर आपने घर बेचा हो, या गोल्ड गोल्ड भी एक एसेट होता है, तो वहां पे अगर आपने प्रॉफिट्स किए लेकिन कहीं और लॉस किया है, तो वो एडजस्ट हो जाता है, एंड वो कैरी फॉरवर्ड भी हो जाता है. तो अगर आपने कहीं लॉस किया है, तो 8 साल तक आप कैरी फॉरवर्ड कर सकते हो उसका. ये बहुत ही बेनिफिशियल है, क्योंकि फ्यूचर में अगर आपने गेन्स किए तो एडजस्ट कर सकते हो. ओके, प्लीज शो स्लाइड्स अगेन. जैसे मैंने कहा था, मैंने मेल एड्रेस लिखा है, आप मुझे मेल कर दो. इट्स neil.d@livemint.com. You can see the full presentation there. If there's a specific slide you want to know more about, I can open it and show you, but we don't have time to go through the entire thing again. Somebody said, what about Anant? What about small finance bank FD? It gives 8 to 9%. Also, FD can redeem after 7 days. So it's not a bad option, but the thing is it's a hassle. आपको वो बैंक में अकाउंट खोलना है, केवाईसी करना है, फिर आप वहां पे पैसे ट्रांसफर करोगे, 8% भी मिलेगा, तो अगर आप 30% ब्रैकेट में हो तो टैक्स के बाद आपका 5% ही आ रहा है, फिर उस पर टीडीएस कट रहा है. उस पर रिस्क भी है कुछ 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 बैंक्स में. आई एम नॉट सेइंग अबाउट एनी पर्टिकुलर बैंक, बट we have had issues with banks in India in the past. I don't know if some of you remember, but Mumbai में ही PMC बैंक का बड़ा issue हुआ था. The bank failed. It was a cooperative bank, but it failed. Yes Bank का हुआ था. Yes Bank did not fail. It had some liquidity issues, and for a while withdrawals were restricted. But it's not unheard of. India में banks have had problems. और जो इंश्योरेंस है, डिपॉजिट इंश्योरेंस, वो 5 लाख तक ही है. हाउ इज हाइब्रिड फंड? सो लाइक आई सेड, जो लास्ट कैटेगरी मैंने कहा, बोला था कि डेट प्लस आर्बिट्राज, वो एक हाइब्रिड फंड का ही टाइप है, एंड इट minimizes the equity component in the fund. इसलिए I think it's the most suitable as a savings account alternative among the different categories of hybrid funds. बाकी जो होते हैं, for example, balanced advantage fund, BAF जो होता है, that has more equity. The fund manager can go bullish on equity and put 65, 70, 80% in equity. तो फिर वो savings account का substitute नहीं बन सकता. That's a very market linked product. Next, is it good to invest in gilt funds as a rate cut scenario? Okay, so gilt funds यानी कि government bond funds. These funds invest in government bonds. And if you have interest rate cuts, then the bond prices go up. And if you have very long dated bonds, government bonds are normally long dated bonds, so then the price goes up even more. And this is determined by something called modified duration. हर fund का एक modified duration होता है. But without going into the technicalities of it, is it a good thing to do or not? अगर आप rate cut expect कर रहे हो, तो हाँ बिल्कुल आप capture करोगे उसका gain. बट रेट कट और आएंगे या नहीं आएंगे उस पर मेरा कोई ओपिनियन नहीं है। ये थोड़ा ऑफ टॉपिक हो जाएगा क्योंकि हम सेविंग्स अकाउंट के ऑल्टरनेटिव्स की बात कर रहे हैं एंड देयर यू डोंट वांट टू बी टेकिंग बेट्स ऑन इंटरेस्ट रेट्स, बट एज अ सेपरेट इन्वेस्टमेंट, एज अ सेपरेट स्ट्रैटेजी, व्हाट यू आर सेइंग इज करेक्ट कि अगर आप इंटरेस्ट रेट्स कट्स एंटिसिपेट कर रहे हो तो you can bet on it through a gilt fund. Is the safety of fund savings account up to 1 lakh per bank or across all accounts in any bank? No, it is per bank. So you can open 5, 6 accounts in 5, 6 banks and multiply that cover, 5 becomes 25 lakhs. But it creates a hassle. It's administrative hassle. आप कितना manage करोगे? And like I said, उसका tax का है ही 30% tax plus TDS, वो सारी चीजें. Let's say we need emergency funds with some ongoing expenses from time to time. Where can you invest? So this is what my presentation talked about. कि आपके पास 5 to 6 different options है. Everything from moving your money to a slightly higher interest providing bank to putting your money in sweep in FDs to putting your money in different kinds of mutual funds, whether it is liquid funds or arbitrage funds uh, or on the riskier side, there are other categories like debt plus arbitrage. If you are thinking of it as कि मुझे short term में ही कुछ पैसा चाहिए, immediately मिल चाहिए, so liquid funds probably are the best candidate because you are able to get them on a day's notice, one day, and there are some fintechs which are innovating to even allow you to get instant liquidity. So there is a SEBI rule which allows instant redemption from liquid funds up to rupees 50,000. And some fintechs have there's a fintech which has integrated it with UPI. तो आप UPI में spend करो पैसा और liquid fund उतने का redeem होता है automatically. You can read my article about that. But liquid funds are now getting to be quite a good option as a alternative to savings bank account. If you don't want any risk, savings bank account is fine. But if you don't like this 2.7% wala interest rate, then you have this as your alternative, liquid funds. And of course, you have to be prepared for some amount of risk. ऐसा नहीं है कि you're getting a free lunch here. Uh, as you said, it may be volatile. Is there a chance of getting capital loss in 6 months? The aim is to bet. So, of course, anything is possible, right? There could be a market dislocation and you could get a capital loss, even a liquid fund for 6 months. But life is about probabilities. You have to, at some point, look at data and see how often that has happened. To my knowledge, it has very, very, very rarely happened. And I've been reporting on mutual funds the last 6 years at Mint. So if let's say 90% of the time you're not going to see a negative return on a liquid fund, the odds are in your favor. You're going to get a bit of a higher rate with a little bit of risk. If any HNI is not convinced with mutual funds, how we convince which types of category we can invest so we get. Look, HNIs will love arbitrage funds because arbitrage funds are cutting their tax, right? HNIs are in higher tax brackets. The highest tax bracket in India, do you guys know? You want to guess in the comments? But anyway, I'll tell you, it's 39%, right? So if you're in that 39% tax bracket, including surcharge and cess, then a 20% tax in arbitrage funds is a big saving for you. So a lot of HNIs like arbitrage funds for that reason. Okay, Neeraj Kaushal, exploring a career in finance, completed stock trading. You want to know more about wealth? Okay, so that's a bit of a different topic, how to get into this field. I don't know if I have time to address that here. If more of you guys want it, then please reach out to the folks at NISM and they might schedule a session on that. But of course, I mean, our economy is growing, wealth management is growing massively as a sector. So there's a lot of opportunities there. Uh, could you share a few debt funds and from where we can buy or sell? I'm not going to give you any debt fund names because that would not be appropriate. That would be recommending a fund. Um, But in terms of where you can buy and sell, so there are some industry owned platforms जैसे mutual fund utilities है, which is collectively owned by the mutual funds in India. It's a free platform where you can buy and sell funds. MF Central भी है, which is owned by the two RTAs, CAMS and K Fintech, where again you can transact for free. So both those, you don't have to go through somebody who will charge you money. Which is more risky, credit risk fund or corporate bond fund? I think the answer is there in the name. So credit risk fund by definition is more risky, Supreet, because they have to invest, if I remember correctly, 65% of their assets in debt paper rated AA or below. Whereas corporate bond funds have to invest 80% of their assets in paper rated AAA, if I remember correctly, or just one grade below that. So corporate bond funds are less risky, credit risk funds are more risky. From Pranali, so as you said, arbitrage may be volatile. Is there a chance of negative return? Yes, there is a chance of negative return in 6 months, but it's very rare. It almost never happens. The only time I remember seeing it is when pandemic hit March of 2020, when the spreads turned negative. And that was just for a month or two. 6 months been nahi tha wo. So anything can happen, but you have to play the probabilities in life and in investing. Uh, Rahul, suppose I have a DAF of 10 lakhs and withdraw just 1 lakh year after year. What will be the amount of capital gain bifurcation? Okay, great question. तो I'm assuming कि आपका जो DAF है वो debt oriented DAF है, मतलब 2 साल बाद आप 12.5% में जा रहे हो. कुछ DAFs ऐसे भी है जो 1 साल बाद जाते हैं, they are equity oriented. But for sake of simplicity, I'm saying आपका debt oriented DAF है. Dynamic Asset Allocation Fund, it's a kind of hybrid fund. So in that case, the first 2 years, your withdrawals will be taxed at slab rate, जो भी आपका slab है. And after 2 years, आपके जो withdrawals होंगे वो 12.5% long term capital gains tax में आ जाएंगे. You will get that tax benefit. Then Ananda, let's say we have losses in F&O or intraday. Can we? No, you cannot. So or rather you can, but it's a bit different from capital gains, losses and profits. So capital gains can very much be offset against capital losses. The rule is short-term capital loss can adjust against short-term capital gain and long-term capital gain. Long-term capital loss can adjust against only long-term capital gain. Now, intraday is classified as speculative income. And if I remember correctly, that you cannot adjust against capital gains. F&O is classified as business income. Again, there are some rules about adjustment. So I don't want to get into the details here. We have an article on that, but it's not as straightforward as adjusting capital gains and losses against each other. I'm not saying you can't adjust business income. You can, but there are some rules about it. So it's not as simple as capital gains ka adjustment against capital losses. How to invest in liquid funds for ultra short period. So how to, again, in terms of platforms, मैंने दो नाम बताए आपको, mutual fund utilities and MF Central, both are owned by the industry. It's not it's not a profit oriented company that I'm recommending. You can go on there, do your KYC and invest for free. Assuming that DAF gave me 8% return. Okay, regional areas, people create chit fund schemes. I don't know how it's called in your place, but there are some 15, yeah. Yeah, it's called Bishi in many places, including Maharashtra. So this is informal lending, right? People form a group and then every month somebody gets to withdraw from the pot. Like it's risky. What if somebody defaults in the group? There is peer pressure, but you can't, it's not easy to take legal recourse. So the returns look superficially attractive. I know that. I know returns in these schemes, in these arrangements tend to be higher because the risk is higher. It's just hidden. You don't see it, but it very much happens. Tell me one thing. Why would somebody borrow from the Bishi at 12% or 18% when the bank is giving them money at 10 or even 8% in case of a housing loan, right? So it's somebody who is risky or as a borrower. So why do you want to get into that? Someone is asking about SGB gold bond. So SGB gold bond is not really debt. It's linked to the price of gold. You do get a fixed return of 2.5% on SGBs, but the government has stopped issuing them. So whatever SGBs are there are old issues which people are trading on the secondary market. It's a bet on the price of gold. It's not so much about debt. The interest is just like a cherry on the cake kind of thing. So it depends on your view on gold. If you think gold will go higher from here, you can very much buy an SGB and capture it that way. But there are other options in gold also. There are gold ETFs which are easier to buy. So since the government is no longer issuing them, I mean the benefit with holding to maturity is that it's tax free at maturity. But without further issues, that will slowly die out. Gold ETFs will of course remain. Okay, I think we are reaching uh, topics for entrance test. That you'll have to ask the NISM folks. Can you explain what happened, Franklin Templeton? Okay, it's a very interesting episode, and we have just 9 minutes left, so I'm conscious of the time. We will stop at 5 o'clock. Namrata, is that correct? If you can confirm to me, I'll.
Yes, sir. One or two more questions, then we are wind up session.
Great, great. Okay, so now Franklin Templeton. So what happened there is that they had invested in risky bonds, and in most normal times, it was not an issue. But in the COVID pandemic, people became risk averse, and a debt fund structure is open ended. So you investor can withdraw the money on any business day. Now, to meet the redemptions, the fund normally sells the bonds in the open market and then pays out the investor. But because of the climate of fear, the liquidity had dried up, especially in those risky bonds which Franklin Templeton had invested in. So they were just not able to meet the redemptions. And they took the unprecedented decision, the shock decision of freezing the outflows from their debt funds, six of their debt funds. I remember it well. I was covering mutual funds back then also. There was, I think, 10 or 11 o'clock in the night call with the media, and they announced it. And the next year, there was a lot of issue. People wanted their money in the pandemic. They could not withdraw it. There was litigation. It went to the Supreme Court. Then the entire AUM of those six funds was transferred to SBI Mutual Fund to liquidate. And little by little, the money came back. So actually, now most of the money has been paid back. So you realize, in hindsight, it was not so much that the bonds were bad, but it was a liquidity issue. They were not able to sell those bonds at the right time. And that's important to debt fund investors. After that, many reforms came into the debt fund space also from SEBI's side. So now it's unlikely that that kind of episode will happen again. Um, from Nidhi, after 2 years, will we get the exemption of LTCG up to 1.25 lakhs? No, that LTCG exemption is only for equity, not for dynamic debt oriented dynamic asset allocation funds. If it's equity oriented, as in it has 65% equity, then yes. Okay, can you repeat the mutual fund app names? Yes, Mutual Fund Utilities, or MFU, and MF Central. Both, as I said, are owned by the industry. Uh, they are not some private player which is profit making. It is free of cost. Um, How about liquid ETFs, especially those with NAV growth? So for if you have a demat account and you trade actively, liquid ETFs might be easier for you because you are buying them in the secondary. You're buying them through your demat account. But for most people who hold mutual funds in what is called the SOA format, it's easier to buy liquid funds rather than ETFs. But they are both similar. The kind of returns you'll get are very, very similar. The tax advantages, disadvantages, very, very similar. Comparison between bank FDs and liquid funds tax wise. Investor is under 12 lakhs income. See, if you're under 12 lakhs income, then you don't pay any tax either ways, bank FD or liquid fund. So uh, it is the same taxation, which is zero in this case. But the other benefits of liquid funds do very much stay. So the slightly higher yield in liquid funds, the flexibility you get of withdrawal, all that still comes into play. From Rahul, suppose my 1 lakh of MF becomes 1 lakh 8,000, I withdraw 10,000. Out of the 10,000, how much will be? So it's proportionate. So 1 lakh becomes 1 lakh 8,000. So that's roughly an 8% gain. So then you have to work out what is 8% of the amount you've withdrawn. Um, and that becomes your taxable gain. So if you withdraw 10,800 rupees is your taxable gain. Only on that much amount you have to pay tax. Uh, Minimum 75% or 65? It's 65% for the category I mentioned, the debt oriented DAFs, as in debt plus arbitrage. There's an article, there's a Mint article on this. Even other newspapers have covered this. It's a new emerging category where it's 65 or slightly below 65% debt and 35% equity, but it's hedged, it's arbitraged away. So you don't take the risk of equity. What's my view on stocks, SIP? Again, it's a bit off topic. I do have views, but I'm not sure I should go into that in this session. SIP is great, but it works better with mutual funds rather than stocks. Uh, okay, I think we are at the end. Once again, I'm going to type my email address here. Please feel free to mail me at any point for the presentation, or if you have specific questions, I will respond. I'm also available on social media. I'll just type my handle. So if you're active on any of them, then you can just tag me and I will try to either answer it myself, or if I don't know the answer, I will try to get some expert to help. Great. I think we're out of time. Sorry, one last question. LinkedIn, yeah, it's just Neil Borate. If you just search for Neil Borate, you will find it. Thank you for the compliment. Uh, Sorry, one question by what to do and can we invest liquid funds to grow and Zerodha? Yes, you can. They are both platforms which enable mutual fund investment. So the platform names that I gave are for people who don't already have their mutual fund platform sorted. But if you already have Grow or Zerodha, then you can use those, no issues. All right, guys, thank you so much for your patience and for being so engaging. I thoroughly enjoyed this session. As I said, reach out to me at any point afterwards also. Namrata, thank you so much, NISM, for arranging this, and I look forward to more such talks in the future.